we were ready to send them in for the blended learning. But the message that we're getting is that in order for blended learning to really work safely, the school is relying on a lot of families to not do blended learning. The school is, any school is relying on a large percentage of the families to do remote only, because what the DOE has in place, there's just so many missing pieces.
I came back to New York in July. As you might know if you've been listening, I was on sabbatical in France last semester. I'm waiting for that new school year feeling to set in, but this August has not brought it. While coronavirus numbers across the country continue to rise, here in New York City, community transmission on average is low. There have been spikes and variations across neighborhoods. Governor Cuomo has said if districts maintain low numbers and the state approves their plan, schools are clear to reopen. Teachers tend to be planners. Right now, I keep trying to match the city's plan to my reality. This is Homework, and I'm Ashraya Gupta.
The city's supposed to be supplying childcare, which they did this semester.
Rachel and Zach are both teachers, and they're married. They have 2 young kids, 6 and 9.
And we did some research, and we've seen nothing.
Since most of the city's plans for reopening mean that teachers come in every day while students only attend part-time, childcare has been on their minds a lot lately.
If you look online, you still get sent to these enrichment centers. That's the only thing that comes up. And when you look at the list of essential workers, it doesn't just say New York City DOE employees as somebody who's applicable for those childcare centers. It only says DOE essential workers. So are teachers suddenly essential workers? I don't know.
I mean, we become essential when we have to go to work.
I hear Zach and Rachel not only wondering whether teachers now qualify for childcare, but posing a bigger question about the role of teachers and schools in our society. Online, I've seen some exchanges between journalists, parents, and teachers get really ugly. I've walked into some heated Twitter exchanges myself. Some people are arguing that the families hit hardest by the pandemic need in-person school to start again. The learning costs of remote are too great, and families can't sustain not going to work. Others think reopening will mean that those families will once again face extreme economic, educational, and health costs. I asked Rachel and Zach what it was like to be parents and teachers in this moment.
Oh, I think it's hard because in some ways our interests are almost pitted against ourselves in terms of the needs of the families that we serve. We feel very responsible to the families and our students, to the point where we probably put those families' needs above our own families' needs. At the same time, sending our own kids to school, we feel like then are we unknowingly endangering our kids' teachers? So it's like we feel a responsibility to our children's teachers, and we feel a responsibility to go and do the job.
It's a web of conflicting issues.
Rachel and Zach feel better equipped than many parents to handle remote instruction. Rachel teaches English as a new language, working with students from kindergarten through 8th grade, while Zach is a high school global history teacher. Even if they don't teach the particular subjects their kids are learning, they know the tools and platforms teachers use. They feel pretty confident that they can support the academic progress of their children. And although they were initially ready to send their kids back, they're increasingly persuaded that doing so means the school will have a harder time dividing up students safely. More kids means less space. Still, they worry about what choosing remote might mean.
We think we're making a decision that's helping the community, but it still sounds like the privileged decision. And it sounds like the decision that middle-class families, probably mostly white, we're white, can decide. And then the school, then it feels like you wind up with a very segregated school system, more segregated than it ever was before. And that feels wrong. It just seems worse. And we want to make a decision that we think is helping, but we feel like really it just smacks of privilege, and I don't know, it feels awful. It feels like there's no good choice.
At my school, we've heard from about 20% of the families that they intend to choose remote. We're a high school, which might change some things, but that number isn't radically different from the reported citywide average.
I text constantly with my students' parents, and I do. There's one family that has decided to stay home. They don't feel safe sending their children back yet. Most of the other families have said that they're really desperate to get their kids back to school because they can't work until their kids are back at school.
My kids, I'm a regular classroom teacher, so I don't have quite as intimate a relationship with their families, but um,
Because you teach 100.
170 kids,
It's very different.
it's a very different relationship. But a lot of the kids were not leaving their house at all in April or May or June, like not even to go for a walk around the block. So I feel like I will be surprised if very many of those parents are eager for their kids to get back on the subway.
New Yorkers hit hard and early, take the virus seriously. That might also mean that they're particularly sensitive to the risks of reopening.
I mean, everybody understands that it's best for students to be in school. We love being teachers. I mean, maybe there's some teachers who don't love it, but we do. And I did my best, and I think I did a reasonable job of doing online learning. But it's not the same, and everybody understands that. But how do you value that against death, the possibility of death?
Well, and the problem is that, people who do really want their kids to go back to school, the problem is they're not going back to the school that they think they're going back to. They're going
Right.
back to an environment that will be much more stressful.
Here, Rachel stopped and made a point that's been driving a lot of the concern about continuing remote. Staying at home might not be feasible or even safe for everyone.
And things keep changing. Things keep like there's the official process that the city is doing this. Do you know about this already? The city collecting
The survey.
the survey.
It's called the Learning Preference Online Form, and it's what you have to fill out if you're a New York City public school parent or guardian and you want your child to participate in fully remote instruction.
But you don't really. But they didn't set it up like you have to choose. They set it up that the default is you're blended, and you have to go out of your way to choose remote.
What that means is if you don't fill out this survey, your child is automatically enrolled in blended learning.
So even just there, people who are just not doing anything are going to get the blended. So already the numbers are skewed. But even worse, you can choose to go remote at any time.
The mayor and the chancellor regularly cite the results of this survey to claim that 70% of New York City families want blended learning. That's because the results show that so far, only 30% of families have opted for remote. Many families at my school are waiting until they know more about our school's plan.
It's the wait and see option for now. It's the, I'm hedging my bets.
Have you taken the survey? Did you have to fill it out, or are you
We
not at?
started filling out the survey like 3 separate times, and then we start getting in this conversation and we talk in circles about just kind of, our children's well-being and our responsibility to the teachers of our children and our responsibility to the community, and how are we going to handle childcare, and are we ever going to see my parents again? And we just go in circles and circles, and then we just stop filling out the survey.
One of the things we discussed last night is we could just drop them off with Rachel's parents, but then we wouldn't be able to see them for months. Like for months, we wouldn't be able to hug them. I mean, if we could drop them off and then see them every other week for and give them a hug, but we can't.
At this point, I found myself having a hard time remembering which questions to ask. Everything about this picture is so difficult. And Rachel and Zach are people who count themselves lucky. They say, "We've been healthy, we have stable jobs." For so many people, that hasn't been the case. Will reopening schools mark the end of that suffering or precipitate another wave?
I think that, teachers who are speaking up are doing this because we know what it's like inside schools. Our bathrooms usually don't function correctly. We don't have soap on a regular basis. We don't have adequate toilet paper on a regular basis. And we don't believe that the DOE is going to do anything different. If you just listen to what the mayor is saying and you listen to what the chancellor is saying, I know their intentions are good and I know that they want to take care of families, but this is, they talk about taking temperatures. Who's taking everybody's temperature at school? We have one nurse for 1,200 students. I think that parents need to know the truth about that. It really might not be possible to do this safely.
My school has been holding virtual meetings about reopening. We talk about dividing students into smaller groups, about the masks and face shields we'll be getting. We ask questions about ventilation. And then I picture the subway station outside school, the airless stairwell of our building, the sink in the girls' bathroom that's been disconnected for years. I can't match what we're planning to what I know.
And maybe that's good to have a wish list. It's nice to have dreams that we'll get temperature checked and we'll wipe down every desk between every class and all
Wait,
that
are
kind
we
of.
getting more custodial staff?
No, we're going to be doing it. We're going to be doing the custodial staff work, or the students are going to be doing custodial work. But we're not getting more custodians, and the custodians were busy before, and we're not getting more nurses, and the nurses were busy before. So
Just a few days after this conversation, the mayor announced that the city would be hiring 400 additional nurses. In some ways, it felt like the concerns of teachers and principals were finally being heard. Maybe we've got more than a wish list. On the other hand, it raised more questions. Where are the nurses coming from and where are they going? We're getting closer and closer to September 10th, and we still don't even have a school calendar that confirms whether that's actually the first day of school. I still feel like a teacher without a plan. But like Rachel and Zach, I'm willing to try. Thank you to Rachel Levinsky and Zach Berman for using the tail end of bedtime to talk with me. Homework is produced in collaboration with the Academy for Teachers, and I'd like to thank them for giving these teacher voices a home. School's starting soon, but I'm hoping to still share these stories. You can reach us at thisishomeworkpod@gmail.com. If you like the show, please rate, share, reach out.
and that's what teachers do, right? We try something, we try something, we try something else. You just have to keep we all just keep doing that because that's what we do.